Welcome back, everybody. In the last lecture, we had discussed about the performance appraisal, its features, its objectives, the performance appraisal process. Now, in this lecture, we are going to cover the methods of performance appraisal. Performance appraisal methods can be classified into three categories as shown in this table below. These can be individual evaluation methods, multi-personal evaluation methods, and other methods. Taking one by one, let's start with the individual evaluation method. Number one is confidential report. Mostly it's used in the government organizations. Descriptive process generally prepared at the end of the every year by the employee's immediate supervisor. It reports the highlights, the strength and weakness of the subordinate. Report is generally not made public, so there is no feedback which is available, though on request now in these days it can be shown. Second is essay evaluation. Rater is asked to express the strong as well as weak points of the employee's behavior. It is normally used with the combination of graphic rating scale because the rater can elaborately present the scale by substantiating an explanation for his rating. While preparing the essay on the employees, the rater considers some of the factors they need to consider, and these are job knowledge and potential of the employees' understanding of the company's program, policies, objectives, etc., employees' relation with the co-worker and the superior, employees' journal planning, organizing, and controlling activity, attitude and perception of the employees in journal. This method has some limitations. It's number one is it's a highly subjective and supervisors may write a biased essay. Other limitation can be that some of the evaluators may be poor in writing essays on employee performance. Third limitation which can be there is that the appraiser is required to find time to prepare the essay, and they are mostly busy, so they don't get enough time to write an essay. Then the other method which is there is the critical incidents technique or critical incident method. In this, manager prepares a list of the statements of every effective and ineffective behavior of the employee. These critical incidents or events represent the outstanding or poor behavior of the employee on the job. Manager maintains log of each employee and use them in evaluation of the worker's performance. They can maintain it in a diary, or they can maintain it in an e-diary or in the form of audio recording. Example of good critical incident can be, suppose the incident happened on July 20. The sales clerk patiently attended to the customer's complaint. He is polite, prompt, enthusiastic in solving customer's problem. Let's take an example for bad critical incident. The incident, we have to mention the date, that is, it happened on July 20. The sales assistant stayed 45 minutes over on his break during the busiest part of the day. He failed to answer the store manager's call thrice. Uh, he is lazy, negligent, stubborn, and uninterested in the work. This method is used to avoid recency bias because the appraiser can go through every event while doing the appraisal in the end. There are some limitations to this also. Negative incidents may be more noticeable than the positive incidents. Superiors have a tendency to unload a series of complaints about incidents during an annual performance review session. It results in a very close supervision which may not be liked by the employees. Let's move on to the other method, which is the checklist and weighted checklist method. Checklist and the latest version, which is weighted checklist, it's in this there are set of objectives or descriptive statements about the employee and his behavior. If the rater believes strongly that the employees possess a particular listed trait, he checks the items, otherwise he leaves the item blank. He will tick on the item, otherwise he will leave that item blank. So the statements can be in the form of yes, no. Most recent variation of checklist method is weighted list. Under this, the value of each question may be weighted equally, or certain questions may be weighted more heavily than the others. Let's take an example for checklist. Suppose the number one statement is the employee really interested in the task assigned? Yes or no. Is he respected by his colleagues or co-workers? Yes or no. Does he follow instructions properly? Yes or no. So the rating the, will be in the form of the person. If he feels that it's a positive statement, he will tick on the yes, otherwise he will leave it blank or will tick on the no. Then the other method is graphic rating scale. Graphic rating scale is a printed form, is used to evaluate the performance of an employee. A variety of traits may be used in this type of rating behavior, the most common being the quantity and quality of work. For example, let's take the quantity of work. It can be volume of the work under normal working conditions. Quality of work is he doing the work neatly, thoroughness is there or not, accuracy of the work. The other dimension which can be there is a knowledge of job, a clear understanding of the factors connected with the job, and then it can be rated on like poor, fairly good, good, or excellent. There are again some drawbacks. It's a subjective process. There is low reliability and it's open to the different interpretations. This is an example of graphic rating scale. There are two tables which are shown. One is continuous rating scale and other is discontinuous rating scale, where the observer will or the supervisor will give the rating. Behaviorally anchored rating scales, bars, it's a combination of weighted checklist and the critical incident. Let's understand how to construct bars, BARS, behaviorally anchored rating scale. Number one step is collect critical incidents. As we had already studied about the critical incident in the previous slide, so all the critical incidents we need to collect. Step 2 for that particular employee, step 2 is identify the performance dimension. The people assigned this task of developing the instrument cluster the incidents into a small set of key performance dimensions, generally between 5 and 10 dimensions, account for most of the performance. Example of performance dimension include technical competence, relationship with customers, handling of the paperwork, and meeting day-to-day deadlines. Step 3 is reclassification of the incidents. Another group of participants who are knowledgeable about the job is instructed to retranslate or reclassify the critical incident generated in step 2. They are given the definition of the job dimension and they are told to assign each critical incident to the dimension that it best describes. At this stage, incident for which there is lower than 75% agreement are discarded as being too subjective. Step 4 is Under the bars is assigning scale values to the incident. Each incident is then rated on 1 to 7 or 1 to 9 scale with respect of how well it represents performance on appropriate dimension. A rating of 1 represents ineffective performance. Top scale values indicate very effective performance. Mean and standard deviation are calculated for scale values assigned to each incident. Incidents that have standard deviation of 1.50 or less on 7-point scale are retained and others are discarded. The last point, that is step 5, is producing the final instrument. About 6 or 7 incidents for each performance dimension, all having met both the retranslating and standard deviation criteria, will be used as behavior anchor. So in front of you, on the slide, you can see an example of bars on a 7-point scale, which is indicating a behavior dimension of performance. You can see on the extremely poor, it's written can expect to take extended tea breaks and roam around purposely, whereas on the excellent good 7 is can expect trainee to make valuable suggestions for increased sales and to have positive relationship with customers all over India. Then the other method which is there is a post choice method or post choice checklist. This method was developed to correct the tendency of the rater to give constantly high or low rating to all the employees. There are set of pair phrases, two of which may be positive and two negative, and the rater is asked to indicate which of the 4 phrases is most and least descriptive to a particular worker. Example, the rater may be asked forcefully to choose any one of the following options available: take up challenges eagerly, always come up with a new idea, leads and shows proper direction to each of its team members, understand the problem and provides valuable alternative solutions to it. The favorable qualities earn a plus credit and unfavorable one earns the reverse. There is another example which is shown on the slide of when for evaluating the punctuality. So their dimensions: he is always on time, he is generally never late, he always has a valid reason for being late, he stays after office hours to complete his work whenever he is late, he always informs the office that if he is going to be late. So the rater will be choosing the options from among these statements. Then there is another method which is management by objective method. It requires management to set specific measurable goals which with each employee and then periodically discusses the later progress towards these goals. Emphasis is on participatively set goals that are tangible, verifiable and measurable. MBO normally focuses on what must be accomplished, that is goals, rather than how it is accomplished. There are 6 steps. That is, number 1, set the organization's goal, set department goals, discuss the department goals, define expected result, and do performance reviews, and in the last, provide the feedback. There is one more method, that is ranking method. As we all are familiar with the ranking method, ranking of an employee in the work group is done against that of the another employee. Though it is relatively easier to rank the best and the worst employees, it is very difficult to rank the average employee. Let's move on to the paired comparison method. Paired comparison method, in this ranking becomes Ranking becomes more reliable and easier under the paired comparison method. Each worker is compared with all the other employees in the group for every trait. You can see in this slide that A is compared with B, then C, D, and E. Similarly for B, B is compared with A, C, D, E, and all the other employees. One of the drawbacks which is there in the for the paired comparison is that the employees compared on overall basis and not on the specific job criteria. Post distribution method, uh, normally known as bell curve, which is which is phased out now in the companies. Companies uh, are not following this method. The rater is asked to appraise the employee accordingly to a predetermined distribution scale. In this, the workers are placed between two extremes of good and bad performances. Example, workers of outstanding merit may be placed at top 10% of the scale. The rest may be placed as 20%, that is good. 40% of them may be put under the average category, and then 20% below average and 10% poor. So the people are forcibly put into these categories. Maybe they must be having the caliber, but then also by the manager they are put under these various categories, and there is a risk that the person who is below average or unsatisfactory, the people who are coming into the below average and unsatisfactory, may be asked to uh, leave the organization or may not be promoted. This method is good when the cost cutting is happening in the organization. Some of the other methods which are there, which is one is group appraisal. The employee is appraised by the group of appraisers. The group consists of immediate supervisors of the employee, other supervisors who have close contact with the employee work, and the manager or head of the department or the consultant. Then there is a method which is human resource accounting. HRA is a sophisticated way to measure in financial terms the effectiveness of the personnel management activities and use of people in the organization. The process shows the investments the organization make in its people and how the value of these people changes over time. The acquisition cost of employees is compared to the replacement cost from time to time. Cost of human resources can include expenditure incurred by the company in hiring, training, compensating, and developing employees. Then there is a method which is assessment center, which was first applied in the German army in 1930. In this method, assessment of several individuals is done by various experts using various techniques. These techniques include the methods which we have discussed earlier, in addition to in-basket role-playing, case studies, simulation exercises, structured insight, transactional analysis, etc. In this approach, individuals from various departments are brought together to spend 2 or 3 days working on individual or group assignments similar to ones they would be handling when promoted. Observers rank the performance of each and every participant in order of merit. Then the other method, which is field review method, a trained field review method, in this, a trained skilled representative of HR department goes into the field and assists line supervisors with their ratings of their respective subordinates. The ratings are done on the standardized forms. Another method which we can discuss is the 360-degree feedback. 360-degree feedback system collect in this the collect the information from the information is collected from the multiple parties, including one's subordinates, peers, supervisors, and customers. A major advantage of this system is that the feedback comes from multiple sources. If a manager has six subordinates, the manager does not know which subordinate said what, as the results are summarized and averaged. So it's very difficult for the appraisee to understand that who have said what for him. There are some merits and demerits of 360-degree technique. Merits, that is, it evaluates methods applied to achieve target, reveals strength and weakness in the management style, forces inflexible managers to initiate self-change, create an atmosphere of teamwork and improvement, unearth truth about organization culture and ambience. Some of the demerits are it ignores the performance in terms of reaching the goals. Colleagues' responses tend to be biased. Assessing deny the truth of negative feedback. The system can be used to humiliate people, as the person will be dependent on so many uh, people. Linking findings to reward can prove to be unfair. So, in this lecture, we have discussed the various methods of performance appraisal and hope you will try to put more efforts, and we will meet in the next lecture.